Hey, welcome back to episode 2. I'm Justin Spurlock, and in this episode, we're asking a kind of deceptively simple question. Who has God entrusted to your care? Not just your family, not just your closest friends, but maybe the grocery store cashier, maybe the coworker in the next cubicle, even the stranger whose name you don't know yet. What if they're all sacred assignments? Let's explore this together. I want you to think about a moment where you unexpectedly realized someone was entrusted to you. Maybe it's a stranger. Maybe it's a neighbor interaction. Perhaps it's even someone you found kind of challenging. Okay. I want you to think about that because I find myself all the time in situations where people are entrusted to my care. Sometimes I find that because I'm a pastor and I find myself in interesting situations and I go, oh, I'm going to have to step up. This person is now in my orbit, in my path in some way, shape, or form, and I have to attend to them. And sometimes it really is that sort of sense of duty, obligation of going, looking around and going, well, I guess it's on me because there's no one else, right? And then other times I much more graciously welcome it, okay? Whether it's me welcoming it or me doing it from a sense of duty, at any rate, it needs to be done. God has entrusted this person in front of me to my care. I want to read from the Gospel of Luke. This is where Jesus sends out 70 disciples out into the villages. It says this: After this, the Lord appointed 70 others and sent them on ahead of him in pairs to every town and place where he himself intended to go. He said to them, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." Notice, they weren't sent to fix people's spiritual lives. You hear that? They weren't sent to save the lost, to get people to accept Jesus into their heart. They weren't asked to have an altar call or even lead a worship service. They weren't sent to preach. They were sent to notice, to bless, to prepare the way for the places that Jesus intended to go. What if you are being sent ahead of God to go before God to the places that God intends to show up? And I want you to think about this then. So, who is God sending you to? Who has God already sent your way? Sometimes it is obvious. Sometimes it is your family members. Sometimes it is colleagues or neighbors. Sometimes it's a community group that you're already working with. But other times it's subtle. Sometimes it's the person sitting alone in the cafeteria. Sometimes it's the single parent at a school pickup. Sometimes it's the neighbor whose dog keeps wandering into your yard. Reverend Dr. Scott Cormode is a professor at Fuller Seminary. He wrote a book called The Innovative Church. He has had a strong effect on my own sense of ministry and how I consider my job as a pastor, particularly a senior pastor. Scott Cormode reminds us that innovation doesn't start with programs. It starts with people. You hear that? Innovation doesn't start with programs. It starts with people. The church's job, your job, my job, is to care for the people that God has entrusted to us. And that begins with noticing. And I want to suggest that there are three rings of noticing. And in that noticing, what you're being asked to do is not only notice, but as you begin to notice, you're being asked to do another task: care, to actually care, to see the person, to listen to the person, to discover their longings and losses, and to attend, because these folks have been entrusted to your care. So, first ring of noticing, first ring of care is the inner ring. This is family, close friends, church members, community members, co-workers, neighbors. These are people that you regularly see on the regular. Second ring. Second ring of people might be people at your work who you don't necessarily go, I work with them, but they work at the same place as me. These are also neighbors who aren't the ones you interact with all the time, but are in that second ring. You may or may not know their names, but you see them semi regularly. These are community members that you go, oh, yeah, that person. And they are somehow related to your vicinity in some way, shape, or form. They're generally people you don't know well, but wouldn't be hard to make some sort of next connection with. And then the third ring is strangers. Strangers you don't know yet, strangers you encounter because they live in that outward vicinity of your life. You may encounter them at the grocery store because they are consistently behind the counter. They may be folks who are at the school, but you don't really have any interactions with them on a regular basis. And you and I can come up with what this outer ring looks like. It's people who are more than another introduction away from us, essentially, right? They are not in that inner ring of people that we really know. They're not in that middle ring of people that we could know. They're in that third ring of people that I didn't even know that I could know yet, right? And then I want you to ask yourself this question: who are three people God has placed in my path this week? I want you to name someone, and you might not have their proper name yet, in each one of those rings. Who is someone that, number one ring, you know their name, right? That God has placed in your path that you need to attend to because they have been entrusted to your care. Who's someone in the second ring that you really don't really know well that God has placed in your path? And you need to notice them, see them, hear them, discover them. And then third is going to be the one that surprises you. Who's the person that you come across this week and go, oh, God placed them in my path? And then two, how might you intentionally pray for them this week? And if the opportunity arises, affirm them, bless them, encourage them, or celebrate them in some way, shape, or form. The reason why our daily faith challenge includes the CareCast on Tuesdays is that praying for others helps us notice God's activity in our networks. You and I are meant to practice sacred noticing, sacred awareness. I want you to take a moment to picture 7 people from your life. So I just ask you to do 3, Now I want you to picture 7 family, neighbors, maybe the barista at the coffee shop, anyone who comes to mind. And as you picture each face, pray quietly, God, thank you for entrusting me with, fill in their name. Show me how to care for them this week. Let me offer a prayer of blessing over you. Lord, open our eyes to see your image in the faces around us. Open our hands to bless them. Open our hearts to be entrusted with their care. Amen. Friends, I invite you to make a list of those 7 people entrusted to your care to go along with the 3 people from the 3 rings. I invite you to share a story with me of at least one of those people and how you believe God has entrusted them to your care, how you might be noticing, seeing, listening, discovering them. And I want you to tune in to next week's episode where we're going to explore what are the longings and losses of those entrusted to our care. Hey, thanks for joining me for this week's Leadership and Transformation podcast, episode 2 of this particular series. Remember, God isn't just sending you out into the world. God is already here, already there, preparing hearts for your presence, your care, God's presence, and God's care. Join us tomorrow for Pastor Danny's sermon preview, and join us next week for this particular episode 3 of Leadership and Transformation podcast. Thanks, everyone.